Welcome, Paul, Justin. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. How's it going?
I'm doing very well. Thank you guys for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Before we get into the Sablier and Juicebox integration, I wonder if we could start with a quick background on both of you. So maybe, Paul, could you give us a sense of what you were up to before you got involved in crypto, and then sort of what you've been working on since then?
Sure. Well, crypto has been and is my life's work. I'm 25, so I have like 5 years in this space. So I pretty much started my adult life in crypto and have remained there ever since. Before that, I dabbled into mobile app development. So I've been a developer for a while, I'd say around 10 years. And half of that is crypto development. And I just discovered Ethereum, loved smart contracts, and never went back.
Cool. And Justin, do you want to give us a quick rundown of your background?
So it's kind of a weird story. I was a professional gamer for a long time. I played for G2 Esports at the end of that eventually. And it was as a content creator, but I always wanted to be, on a professional team. I was trying really hard. I found crypto after I lost my job. With G2, I kind of lost my apartment. So I found crypto just poking around, being bored. I'm not sure if you guys remember like George Hot's Cheapeth.
Yes.
Yeah. That chain, I guess he kind of did some weird stuff with that chain, but I found Solidity because I wanted to make a jukebox, not a juice box, a jukebox on Cheapeth. Eventually, I found out about Gitcoin and how they funded open source software, and I was like, oh man, okay, so I can just like start here with the laptop and nothing else. So it was a super exciting time, and that was at the end of 2021. And yeah, I've just fell in love with Solidity and all of the stuff that's happening. Like, there's always something every day. So,
Sweet. All right. Well, before we dive into Juicebox, how about we talk about Sablier? So, Paul, do you want to give us a rundown of what Sablier is and how it works?
Sure. So for context, I'm co-founder of CEO of Sablier Labs, and we've built the Sablier token streaming protocol on Ethereum. As far as I know, we are the first protocol to ever do this. We launched the first version in 2019. And what we do more specifically is lockup streaming. Lockup means that the way it works is that you make a one-time deposit of ERC20 tokens into our smart contract. You specify duration, so a start time and an end time, and then every second that initial deposit will get streamed or allocated towards the recipient. And this provides an easy automated solution for making long-term payments on chain. And we have gotten traction with all kinds of use cases, but mainly token vesting. So when you create like a governance token and you want to distribute it to your investors, to your team, how do you do it in a very efficient way on chain? Well, Sablier fits the bill very well for that use case. Also for payroll and all kinds of rewards for by DAOs, where rather than having to do some monthly payments, which are manual and cost time and effort in safe multisigs and so forth, it's just easier to create one stream and then you can forget about it, and then the recipient can claim in real time. That's how it works at a very high level. We launched the first version in 2019, but very recently in July we launched our V2. Spent a very long time building it. It's 100% built with Foundry. We're quite proud of what we achieved. And we added quite a few features. Most notably, we have now nonlinear streaming. So you can have, for example, cliffs, exponential streams, quadratic streams, where the longer you're staying with a company, the more tokens you're getting. We also have NFTs. So now every stream is an NFT that can be transferred around and composed with DeFi and so on and so forth. And all kinds of bells and whistles that make Sablier V2 a much more refined and easier to integrate protocol.
Do you have any other bells and whistles that you want to point out? Any other kind of nitty-gritty, smaller features that you want to shout out from your V2?
I would focus on this integration aspect. So we have, for example, hooks. Whenever a stream is interacted with by some user, the protocol actually notifies the other party about what has happened. And if you're making an integration with Sablier V2, you can literally react from your smart contract. You can know what has happened to the system and perform some response. For example, if you're building an NFT lending protocol and you're using NFT like Sablier V2 NFTs as collateral, and somebody cancels the stream, you can respond in real time and do something like, I will liquidate the borrower, or I will change the accounting, or something like that. So that's one cool thing. Another cool thing is that we have broker fees for integrations. So if you are making an integration with Sablier, and for example, you are allowing your users to create streams through the protocol, there is an optional parameter called a broker, which you can pass a fee that is charged on the stream deposit. And the idea here is, to build on-chain businesses with revenues. We are like revenue maximalists. We think this is the only sustainable way in the long term to create crypto companies, and we offer that feature as like a way for our integrations to build a sustainable business with us together. Generally, those are the big features. As I've said, we have small things like cliffs. One thing worth mentioning, which is super useful, is a batch streams. So you can create multiple streams in one transaction, which wasn't possible in V1. But now this makes it easy peasy for DAOs, for safes to create 10, 20, 30, 40 streams with just one call. You'd have to pay the gas, of course, but it still saves time and effort and so forth. And also, I'd like to mention that we do have a lot more flexibility in the way the streams can be created. So if in V1 you had to specify a rigid start time and end time, and there were many requirements, now we have much more flexibility. So for example, we have this function called create with durations, which lets you start a stream dynamically at the time when the transaction is included in the blockchain. So you specify duration of 1 year, and whenever the transaction will be mined, will be executed, then that's when the stream will actually start. And we didn't have this in V1, we have it now.
Amazing. All right, I'm excited. Justin, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you have in mind for bringing Sablier into the Juicebox ecosystem?
Yeah, so the integration is a split allocator, which is a treasury extension. It connects to a project's funding cycle via its splits. Yeah, so pretty much we attach the split allocator to the funding cycle, and when you issue a payout, basically the split allocator will receive a portion of what is paid out. So yeah, a treasury can complete their payout to the split allocator, and they can pay some of their contributors or somebody they need to pay with token streams via Sablier. So it's pretty straightforward. There's a portion of it that is abstracted away that I've tried to just create, an abstract contract that just carries most of the Sablier interactions, and then the contract and inherits from it is basically just a stream management interface, so people can withdraw via their streams. Whoever's managing the splits or whoever's managing the treasury can come in and they can add recipients. So and configure the token amounts, durations, and I've tried to keep it as modular as I can. So create with durations, create with, let me see, what are they called?
With range and
with range,
milestones and deltas. There are 4
milestones and deltas. Yes, thanks.
4 horsemen. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So pretty much just that.
And is there going to be any features within that, like the ability to pause payments or transfer them, or any other features that we can expect with this integration?
Yeah. So pausing, canceling. I think it's just canceling, isn't it?
So the core Sablier protocol doesn't support pausing, but given that we have this abstraction layer that you built for managing the streams, I could, in theory, imagine your own custom layer which implements the pausing by basically canceling the stream and then keeping in like trustless custody the assets until you recreate like another stream. In fact, we do have a function called cancel and create. So if you have the need for updating streams or like editing streams, that is more of like a question of how you present the feature to the user. You can say edit stream, but under the hood, it would just cancel a current stream and create like a new one.
Right. Yeah. So I haven't really gotten to that portion of integrating the bells and whistles just yet. But yeah, I'll definitely put that in the notes for sure.
just to confirm, the split allocator that you're describing, Justin, that's a pay delegate that you're building, basically?
No, it's just a split allocator. So it's different from
It's different from a delegate.
From data sources and pay delegates and redemption delegates. So it's actually just a contract that's deployed independently that is attached to a project's funding cycle splits.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it allocates from the split. You set a denomination of, or a percentage of how much it receives from the split payout. But there's also down the line, we can do interesting things with project tokens. We can have the split allocator receive those and then actually stream treasury tokens to the recipients. So that'll be cool. So there's a lot of ways we can go with it.
I wonder, Paul, I wonder if you could speak a bit to why you think that streaming tokens is an important primitive. Like, why was this something that you developed initially? I'm just curious because in a way, like Juicebox can do some similar things, like in terms of like the reserve token issuance, and you could think of that almost like sending tokens over time as they're minted. But I'm curious why this primitive of streaming tokens is important to you.
The answer depends upon each use case separately, and I'll give you the answer for two use cases: payroll and grants. Grants because this is more aligned with what you guys do, but like payroll because this is where I started from. So I was 2018. I had my first job at a crypto startup, and I was paid once per month because that's Europe. And what I was doing is I was taking that fiat and putting it on Coinbase and like degenerating it to Ether and other things. And I thought, look, but I mean, smart contracts, they have this cute property called block timestamp. And I can handle that block timestamp thing with my hands, with my computer, because I know how to build smart contracts. So I just had this idea. I loved it. I thought, it felt natural to me that crypto developers, people, technical employees, whatever, they should be paid in crypto if they want to. And because we have no arbitrary limitations of having to have these like monthly payouts, or in the US bi-weekly payouts, I said the natural way seems to be paid as you go, because you basically come to work every day. So that was the inspiration, the original inspiration. But now to tell you the value proposition as like a money primitive for grants, it solves a problem of what I call the discrete payment problem in low trust environments. So when you're giving out a grant as a DAO, you're not necessarily seeing the grantee face to face. You don't necessarily have developed a relationship with them. And the bigger a DAO, the greater it becomes to have those tight-knit, close relationships with people. And that leads to friction, that leads to long review times for grants, and even to scams. Like there have been many cases of scams or things close to scams where people, they got the money upfront, like some advance payment, but then they didn't deliver. And I argue with Sablier that the problem is in a great part actually solved. Because what you can do is you can start a stream and then you let the passage of time itself be the trust generating mechanism. So if you have a grant that you stream for 90 days or 4 months or whatever, then after 5 days, if the grantee doesn't respond or they haven't even created the GitHub repo, you have a pretty good idea that something bad is happening. So you can preemptively cancel the stream, and all you lose is the stream for the first 5 days, rather than some bigger, advance payment, which is typically the case. But let me actually give you like another use case, which is more, I would say, banal, but super helpful, potentially for large value payments. So everybody in crypto, when you have like a large payment, you send like a small amount just to ensure that the recipient address is correct. And it's the same thing with like, big, like large payments in Web2 with banks, right? They do all of these checks, right? So what you can do with streaming is say, look, I will create a stream with whatever, 2 months, and then you can make a task withdrawal after the first few hours to see if it works. And then whatever, you either let it finish because you set it to, 1 day or something, or you cancel it and then you create like another one or just make a one-time payment. I would put it like this. Whenever there's a long-term engagement between two parties or large sums involved, streaming makes for a way to generate trust with time.
Awesome. Thank you. And maybe, Justin, do you want to speak to kind of what you feel this functionality will bring to Juicebox as a protocol?
Yeah, I think he hit the nail on the head. Like the trust issue and having those fallbacks is super important. I think for governance, like it's huge. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. I'm curious, like all these interactions are kind of costly on mainnet. So what L2 or like, is this an L2 conversation about like, where are we going to be paying each other and receiving payments? And like, what do you think that looks like in the future, Paul? Because right now it's kind of just like a bunch of different style rollups.
I'm not really sure. I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about this problem. I generally think that in 10 years from now, if I open a DeFi app, I won't even see the chain name. However, I have no idea how we will get there based on the current technology. Maybe AI, which like analyzes your assets based on your user address and so forth, and like the cross chain transactions will be completely abstracted away. In the nearer term with Sablier itself, my hope is that we will continue to make integrations with all kinds of players in crypto and DeFi, and the holy grail is for streams to become a part of your wallet. Right, so you open your typical wallet and you have your like static balance, but that gets augmented by a new dynamic balance, which includes your Sablier streams. And then whenever you want to spend it, your wallet will automatically do those withdrawals for you or something like that, where it gets like hidden underneath. So there are many ways we can think about like how we can automate this. It's just a question of like finding the right partners, thinking about the best UX. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that was a lot cooler. That went a lot cooler route than my question. Actually, so there's one thing that I wanted to mention or like have us talk about was like maybe Matthew or Brileigh can explain a little bit of the Juicebox lore.
The long story of how it got started was that Django and Perry were the two, Perry was more on the front end side of things and Django was more the primary author of the contracts. And the problem that they were trying to solve was for if you're developing a product, usually software more in like a SaaS context, how do you get that started? Well, the typical answer is VC funding, and then all of the problems that come along with that. But what they were trying to think of was a way to solve that problem where you could pay early on to support the project, and over time, there would need to be less and less funds coming in, and so like the cost of the product over time would go down and down, and it would trend towards zero. So it was trying to think through ways of funding the development of something without necessarily taking VC funding and giving out allocations and all that, all the problems that come along with that. So I'm sure Django could give a much better description of this, but that was the basic problem. And so early on, Juicebox was actually called Fountain, and later came the Juicebox Banny lore and all that fun stuff. The most probably well-known project was the kind of internet flash mob that was Constitution DAO. So a group of anons coming together to buy a copy of the US Constitution and raised over 46 million, I think, in ETH, or around, give or take. So we actually did a 3-part podcast on Constitution DAO and interviewed a lot of the core team members. And I think it was interesting because it was sort of like a way for the mainstream media to become aware of DAOs and to talk about DAOs. And then all of a sudden there were, quote, normal people talking about DAOs and thinking about what it meant for, a group to collectively own something as opposed to, a more traditional hierarchical organizational structure. So it was an interesting moment for sure, but that's a basic rundown. I don't know if you have other things you want to touch on, but.
That's awesome. Is it accurate to say this is a bit like putting co-ops on chain with a new crypto economic design under the hood?
You could say that. Usually people tend to equate Juicebox to like a Kickstarter because most of the successful projects are fundraisers. But you could also definitely say that it is a co-op because community ownership and governance is a huge value of Juicebox, whether that's the protocol itself being governed, because when you send out payouts from a project, you pay a 2.5% fee, which in turn gives you JBX. So in other words, like the community that is using Juicebox also owns it. So there definitely is sort of that like co-op value that is being presented in like the Juicebox protocol.
Very nice.
Is there anything that we didn't cover about Sablier or about this Juicebox integration that you would like to discuss before, or any closing thoughts from either of you, Paul or Justin?
Well, we spent more than a year building this with Foundry. So if you're a Foundry dev listening to this, we would absolutely love to hear your feedback. If you want to have a look, I think you'll find and derive quite a bit of value just by looking at the code. I actually had a presentation at ECC only about our testing structure. So that there was 20 minutes only about tests. If you're into that, then go have a look. It's on my Twitter page. But it's also about Sablier, so it's like 2-in-1. It's Foundry and Sablier. So that's something worth mentioning. We take security super seriously. And if you're a Foundry dev, we would love to talk to you, just get to meet you. If you have any feedback for what we built, that'd be cool.
You talked about the testing. What was it about? Did you build a different testing suite as an alternative to what's included in the standard library, or no?
I built this thing called PRB test, but no, that's not what I presented at ECC. What we built for Sablier specifically is this new testing technique, which I coined branching tree technique with capital letters, in short BTT. It's in the ECC presentation, so maybe we can link to that in the show notes. But the idea is that you write this natural language specification for your Solidity function, and you build a hierarchy of states and tests using plain English. And there are many advantages. Firstly, that you basically verify, you think about all the possible execution paths of your contract, and that file doubles as like a tool you can share with your non-Solidity team members who might want to understand the flow. For example, if you have a front-end colleague who builds a form for interacting with your contract, then they will see that, oh, look, for this final test to pass, all of these conditions have to be met. It's BTT, branching tree technique.
Oh, cool. So it's helpful for devs trying to make integrations for the contracts. Explain it in plain English. Oh, okay. Also that. I'll check it out. Cool.
Maybe talk about our docs, if you like them, if you hated them.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point. I loved them. There are a few broken links, which that happens in every docs. I think I can remember where it is. I don't right now, but everything is super clear. There's one feature, I don't know if you can add to whatever you're using for the docs, but I think the Juicebox docs might have it where there's like an ampersand beside the section, and you can click that and get the link to that specific paragraph of text or specific code link. That's pretty much the only thing, just being able to link straight to it. So I could be like, hey, like, here's what's happening when I'm following this section of the docs. That would be cool. But besides that, no, it's great.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Your site's super cool. The app is beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. And your subgraph is now fixed, I noticed.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your feedback.
I'm curious, Justin, how was your experience in the Juicebox hackathon? Speaking of docs and learning protocols.
Yeah, I think Juicebox, there's a lot being built on the periphery besides the core protocol. So I think it was more drinking from the fire hose than with Sablier. Sablier is pretty straightforward with its integrations, and there's not a lot happening on the periphery except for interacting with PRB proxy to batch deploy and patch cancel and things like that. I love the Juicebox docs. The hackathon was fun. Yeah, I had a great time. I didn't have a lot of time to do it, so I made a simple contract, but I tried to follow the format, and yeah, it was super exciting time actually that week.
Do you want to like briefly describe what you built?
Yeah, I built a Merkle root whitelist that allows you to either whitelist people to pay into your project or to redeem tokens from it. That's pretty much all it is. It's a whitelist because putting a huge array of addresses on Ethereum is super expensive. So we want to do some hashing. We want to get into the crypto basics. Yeah.
Awesome. So basically, it would let any project whitelist a set of addresses. So it would be able to decide only these addresses are able to pay a project or do some other function.
Yeah. When somebody goes to pay, they submit a proof that proves that they are on the whitelist, and that allows them that their address exists in the Merkle tree, and then that allows them to pay in or redeem their tokens.
Very cool. All right. Well, I think we've covered everything. So yeah, thank you both for chatting about Sablier and about integrating into Juicebox and what you're working on. So I think we'll do a follow-up at some point when the integration's further along and maybe once it's ready to go live. But yeah, thank you both for your time.
Oh, I thank you. This was great.
Yeah, thanks a lot.